Hi, everybody. This is David Rodriguez. Welcome to the All Games New and Old mic drop, where I do an interview, and then we have a debate about a not too controversial topic in the board game world. So my guest today is Tim from the Board Game Hot. Wow, I almost called you the Hot Cakes podcast. From the Board Game Hot Takes podcast. It is not about pancakes. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing good, but I wish that you would just call us the Board Game Beefcakes if you're going to go that route. That'd be better.
The Board Game Beefcakes pod. I like that. That'd be pretty good. I feel like if you ever branch out into doing video too, that's probably more appropriate because you could be anybody behind those microphones. I mean, people are seeing you now, and they probably are saying, yes, he is indeed a beefcake. But I don't know. Who knows what those other two guys look like?
Well, thanks for having me on, David. I'm excited to be on your show for the first time.
Oh, I'm excited to have you. It's you're only my second interview here. I'm still kind of feeling it out, to be honest with you, and it helps that we had a little talk about this. That you talk very well. You aren't shy with your words, and that'll be fantastic because makes my job a little easier for sure.
I may talk too much. So
that's okay.
Well, cut me out. Edit me out if you need to.
I can. Yeah, I'll edit out everything that you say, and then and just have any screenshots of you just staring blankly, and that'll be. No, I would never do that to you. So let's see. I first heard about your podcast, I'm pretty sure through Riley Stock from the Board Game Community Show. I don't remember exactly if he just straight up recommended it or if you were on one of his episodes or what, but either way, that's the first place I heard of it. And I'm guessing because many times I had searched through a podcast on Apple before looking for board game podcasts, and it wouldn't shock me if I looked at the name of your podcast and was like, nah, these guys are just going to be saying whatever controversial thing they can. I know that's been kind of a thing for you guys in the past, because I believe when I started listening, you were in the middle of trying to change your name, perhaps.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of issue with that name?
Well, I don't know how many people have chosen not to listen like you did, or you may have in the past. Yeah, it's funny. Our name, we kind of picked it because Adam and Chris and I were all playing games online, and this was right after the pandemic started. And Adam reaches out to me one day. He's like, "Let's start a podcast." I was like, "Great, I've got an idea. We'll do our weekly game night, and then we'll just talk about the games right after." And I just threw out like, maybe we could call it like Board Game Hot Takes, just like immediate reactions. Yeah. And it just, then we just acted quick. Like, I don't sit around on stuff. So we immediately, the next time we did a game night, we just decided to record, and we tested a session. You can actually find that very session out on our podcast channel. But because I introduced it with that, it just stuck. And I never liked it. And I knew Adam didn't like it. I could tell he's very nice. He never says anything mean, but you can tell when he doesn't like something. He'll kind of hint. That's like, funny. Hey, do you think it's possible that somebody may already have that name? Maybe we should double check that. That's funny. I should have just changed it back then, but we kind of got in the momentum, and I started like immediately. I was like, okay, I got to buy a domain name. I got to, set up email accounts. I got to set up a Twitter account, and it was all done. And within a few months, and our listeners are starting to grow, and I was like more and more feeling like, I feel like people, maybe they're not interacting with us because they're worried about, what our message is and who we are. So about a year in, we were all sitting around. We were in Palm Springs together. We all got together to game, and we're sitting around one night, and I was like, we should change our name. And Adam's like, yeah, I've never liked it. And Chris is like, okay, I'll go along with that. So we brainstormed and we talked about it. And for months, we had a text thread going, how about this name? How about this name? And we're testing with our friends and stuff. And then we finally decided, like, okay, these are a few names we like. And we put it out on Twitter, a poll, and asked people if they preferred any of those names, and kind of mentioned on our show that we were going to choose a new name. And all the feedback we got was like, those names are all crap. Your name is fine. And so we didn't feel good about picking any of those. And it was just too much work to go through that again. So we still have this name. I've had a few people tell me that they were happy when they finally listened to us, that it wasn't what they were expecting. But I don't really know how much it's impacted us. And I had some people tell me, hey, we listened to you because we thought it'd be like entertaining, like hot takes, and you weren't that, but right. We still enjoyed the show. So who knows, maybe we got some new listeners because of it. Maybe we lost some because of it, but we're kind of stuck here now.
Yeah. I can't even remember what the names you guys were trying to pick from were. I think there was one I thought was okay, but I was like, I kind of like their rate. I don't think they're going to change this. Like, it's fine. I asked that question, but I never really found it that confusing. Like, you explain it off the top, I think, every episode. Because yeah, you guys are just playing a game and then immediately talking about it. And how often do you think it is that it's a game that none of you have played? Is that typical, or usually has at least someone tried it, or what's the situation with that?
It's pretty frequent. We do play all of our favorite games on there. So it's like
Mhm.
basically what happens is we kind of rotate every time we do an episode. It's like, Chris, it's your turn to pick a game, and he'll throw something out, or he'll throw a few out and say, what do you guys think of these? And sometimes it's a game he's played or we've all played before. And then
Mhm.
sometimes it's like maybe it's a hot new game that he just picked up. Adam does this the most. He'll get a new game from Kickstarter. We're going to be talking about this a little bit later tonight, but he'll get a new game from Kickstarter. It can be any random thing that he backed like 3 years ago. He's like, guys, I really want to play this game. Can we play it? And so it may not be something that's super exciting for listeners, but Adam wants to play the game, so we play it, and we get in and talk about it. So it's pretty frequent, though. There's a lot of games that we play for the very first time. We're pretty good about all going and reading the rules or watching a rules video, so nobody's like doesn't understand what they're walking into. We all have
Right.
a pretty good understanding of the game, but it's often our first play.
Gotcha. It always seems to me, and it's probably in my head, it's probably more exaggerated than it actually is. It seems to me like you three guys have pretty different tastes in games a lot of times, and I don't know if I'm just imagining that, but I mean, do you run into the situation a lot where one or more of you like desperately doesn't want to play a game, but one of you really does, and like how do you guys? I mean, do you guys just do it and just hope for the best, or like what happens? Has that happened to you?
Yeah, we do have different tastes. I think that in some ways they're kind of merging over time. The more games we play together,
Mm,
we're kind of finding the love of what works for all of us. And maybe, and we've talked about this in the past, in that if your friends are enjoying the game you're playing with, you're probably going to enjoy it a little bit more. So I
right.
think that we probably diverged a little bit more originally, but we're pretty sensitive to each other's feelings about what you want to play, and we still are. We're still like, hey, you guys are interested in playing this? And if one of us is like, no, not at all, then we're like, okay, let's move on. We want to make this
Right.
fun for everybody. But we definitely do have some different tastes, and yeah, we occasionally will play a game where one or two of the other people are like, I didn't like that at all, right? I mean,
Right.
it's definitely happened a few times.
Yeah. So, how did you end up doing, like, well, not even just podcasting, but how did you end up in this hobby? Because it's like everyone's path seems a little bit different, and it's a lot to get into. It's a very big, kind of overwhelming hobby at first, I think.
I grew up playing games with my family. I had a brother that was just a little bit older than me, and everything we could find that was nerdy to get our hands on, we would. But we didn't have a lot of exposure to stuff, so we played a lot of kind of family weight games. But we found things like Stratego and played the heck out of it. We would make up games out of like trading cards that we picked up, and we'd make up
Oh
like
wow.
little war type games with them. But right after I got out of high school, my brother had introduced me, and this is Steve. He gets on our podcast once in a while, but he
Mhm.
introduced me to Magic the Gathering. This was in like 95 probably, and I think
Oh wow.
Magic the Gathering came out at 94. So
Yeah.
he introduced me to Magic the Gathering, and I got immediately hooked. He like played a game with me, and I struggled through the rules, and then he handed me some cards. He's like, here, build a deck. And I got back together with him and some of his friends like a week later, and I had made the worst deck possible. We played a team's game. I got absolutely crushed, but I just got the bug, and I think I got the bug more than anybody else I knew. So
Oh
I
wow.
started to get really into Magic. I played competitive Magic for like 15 years. I was really into Magic for like 20 years. And probably about 5 years ago, I would occasionally like get to play a hobby game with my brother, or with, my wife and I picked up a couple that sounded interesting, but I was
Mhm.
so engaged in Magic, I really didn't get too focused on it. But about 5 years ago, my wife met some people, and she's like, hey, we found out they play board games. You want to do a game night? And I'm like, yeah. And this guy comes over, this couple comes over, and they've got like seven, serious hobby board games at the time. They brought over Agricola, was the first game they sat down and taught
Oh
us
my
to play.
gosh. Wow.
And I just loved it. And everything he taught, I was like, they're so excited about it. So we immediately set up another game night. A few days later, we went to their house, and we saw his, shelf just like you've got behind you. And at the
Right.
time, I was so blown away. And so him and I just started like, every Tuesday night, let's get together and play a game. And then sometimes we get together with our families and do games. So I really got hooked into it at that point. It was a good timing too, because I was kind of just, like, we had moved, and I wasn't really finding anyone local to play Magic with. So I'd go to some local tournaments, but I just wasn't getting I wasn't getting the hit as much as I wanted to. So
Right.
getting introduced to the board game hobby, it was so much fun to explore all these new games and these new mechanisms. And yeah, so that really dragged me in. And then I just, it was all downhill from there.
Yeah, for sure. So you and your hosts, Chris and Adam, you all live in different states, correct? I'm not
Yeah,
crazy.
that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, we all lived with we all met in Long Beach, California. We all lived there
Okay.
right before the pandemic started. We all lived there together.
Oh, okay.
And we kind of, once the pandemic started, we all families all said like, hey, we're not going to make contact with anybody. So we all separated, and we immediately started getting online and just playing board games on Tabletop Simulator so we could keep
Mhm.
having our weekly game night. And within a few months, Chris and his family moved away. They decided they were going to move to Portland. They kind of had a plan for a little while, but that happened at
Right.
that time. And like 6 months later, my wife and I had been talking about moving anyway. We started uh, kind of exploring Phoenix and checking out some areas here, and found that we kind of liked it here. So we ended up moving in October. So we all split up like after the podcast started, basically.
Wow. That's kind of tough. So you are all your, well, I know you guys get together at least once or twice a year,
Yeah,
correct?
twice a year is kind of our scheduled plan right now.
Right. That's awesome. So, pretty much all your plays are on Tabletop Simulator, then I assume, other than in those two times with each other, or
Yeah, any platform we can find something on. We prefer Board Game Arena, and
yeah.
Board Game Arena has a great, there's a lot of great games out there. So we play there when we can. We've played Yucata, we've played Board Game Tabletop Simulator, we played Tabletopia. So yeah, usually wherever we can find it, we prefer Board Game Arena or Yucata if we can. One of the kind of the pre-scripted games where you're not
Yeah.
fiddling around with all the stuff in the physics engine. But the thing is, like most really new games you can't find on those platforms, so we end up
Right.
playing newer
That's
stuff
true.
on Tabletop Simulator a lot.
Yeah, I played exactly one game on Tabletop Simulator, and it was Journey into the Beyond, this Kickstarter that I think it's still going right now. And I played with the designer, and that was really cool. But he had to like literally show me how to do. Okay, this is how you put a card under your deck, and this is how he had to teach me how. And now I don't remember again because it's been it's been a couple weeks and I haven't tried to go back on there, so I don't even remember anymore. So I'm with you. I like those ones that kind of handle everything for me. If there was everything on Board Game Arena, I'd be thrilled with that, but
Yeah, Tabletop Simulator is, I mean, it's cool that it exists and people can throw
yeah.
games up there quickly. So we've gotten a chance to play some like pre-Kickstarter games and stuff on there. But it is hard to manage. And there are a lot of shortcuts like, hey, you want to put something in your deck, then click Control F5 8 and it'll
Right.
do this stuff. But I don't remember all those shortcuts. So what I ended up doing is like put something in your deck. Okay, let me click my mouse, move my deck over here, flip this card upside down. You right click, flip it, put it down, put the deck on top. But you can imagine that gets to be a huge hassle. Try playing
Yeah.
a drafting game on there, like Blood Rage or something like that.
Oh,
It's
no.
like, okay, here's the cards I want to, I'll put all these cards on the table. These are ones I'm going to pass to you. And then you pick them up, and eventually somebody drops all their cards off the table. Where'd they go? Oh, they landed right in the middle of the table again. Hopefully they're all not, mixed in. So it can be a total mess. It wastes. It's a a total time killer sometimes, and can be really frustrating. It depends on the game. Some games go pretty smoothly on there.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine. Having only tried that one and having someone walk me through it, that was pretty smooth. But man, I'm glad I didn't just try to jump into some random game on that, because I don't know what I would have. It would have been a disaster, and everyone would have wanted me to leave really, really fast. I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, it wouldn't have been. I mean, like I'm bad at. I'm bad at doing well. I can't do well at games anyway, as you've learned from playing against me on a couple episodes of Mr. Owl's rants and reviews. But man, you try to make me handle decks of cards with an interface that I don't even get. Forget it. Like I just don't even have me there. It's a nightmare. But
I have kind of a funny story. So before the pandemic, I used to fly out to Chicago once a month and spend a week out there, and I'd meet with the team that works with me. I work for a technology company, but I go meet with the team that works out there, and I would always set up a game night, and I had I'd have 7 or 8 people show up, and we'd have a couple games running or whatever, and it was a good team building thing. And when we went to when the pandemic happened and we stopped traveling, I was like, well, let's try some online game nights. And the only platform I knew at first was Tabletop Simulator. So I set up a couple of games on Tabletop Simulator with my work crew. And these are people that were a little bit less gamery than I was. They just weren't as involved, but also they'd never used anything like this. And I still remember the first night we played Champions of Midgard. And it was like, Champions of Midgard's a pretty quick worker placement game. Usually takes like maybe 60 to 90 minutes to play or whatever.
Right.
This ended up being a 4-hour game
Oh
because
man.
like with two of the people on the table, they couldn't grasp the idea of where to put your mouse to pick up the resource and drag it somewhere else. And there's a lot of resource drag in there. So it ended up like 30 seconds into their turn, and I'd be like, here, let me just pick those all up for you. And it was just, it was like, so I haven't done that again. Not on the tabletop simulator. I'll do BGA with my team once in a while, but.
All right. So as I mentioned, I kind of discovered you, I'm guessing maybe, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago. I don't know. I've kind of lost track at this point. Have you done many other collaborations with any other podcasts or anything along those lines?
Not a whole lot at this point. I'm happy to, but I haven't been pushing for it. Our schedule's pretty busy, but I've done stuff obviously with Riley. I was on his show a couple times.
Right.
With Organized Fun, which is, friends with Riley.
Mm-hmm.
Funnily enough, they discovered me. I kind of booked both of those at the same time, even though they weren't, I didn't learn about them through each other, but they knew each other already. I've done stuff with Ryan Rouse and Mr. Rouse with you. I did the definitely a board game podcast, and starting to do and collaborating with you a little bit on the Cardboard Conjecture podcast.
Right.
So we did get to we got an invite from Board Game Barrage, which of course they just won the kind of the Golden Geek podcast award this last year. So they invited us. They've been really friendly since we started the podcast. They'll reach out once in a while and like, hey, we listened in, here's some tips. So they've kind of collaborated with us a decent amount. We chat with them occasionally, but they invited us to just put a little segment on one of their shows. So Chris ended up recording it, but they did a show like a year ago where they invited a whole bunch of content creators to, just film a little segment about a game that they were excited about for this year. And so we got involved with that a little bit, but that's about it. I'd love to do more. I love hanging out, talking with people about board games. So hopefully more coming.
I have to say, even just doing that little, because we basically had to, on Cardboard Conjecture, we're doing like a 5 to 7 minute segment. Like it doesn't even have to be every week, but theoretically every week about what we've been playing. And just doing purely audio, I thought, well, that'll be simple, because I usually get on camera and I talk, maybe not well, but I do it. But for some reason, I don't know why. I think maybe because I can't like gesture, and like I had to restart that little segment so many times trying to get it right. I'm like, geez, man, like this is a lot harder than I don't know why. It feels so much harder than I thought it would be. I like, man, podcasters got more talent than I do.
I think doing it solo, I find it a lot harder actually too. When I'm sometimes I'll record a clip, like a game description or something that we're going to insert into our podcast. And if I'm just doing it myself, I feel like I stumble over my words all the time. I can try writing it, I can try not writing it, and I just can't seem to do it successfully, because it doesn't feel like the normal conversation.
Right.
And so like Cardboard Conjecture is a great example. Like I did that clip for this episode, and I just felt like I stumbled over everything, and it just was a mess. But I didn't want to mess around. Like you went back, that was nice of you to go back and record it like 3 times. I didn't. I just left it as is, and I regret. Like I was also the messiest, the sloppiest, segment on there. And I think it's something that does take some practice. But I think that the more like doing it when you're talking to other people, I always feel like it just comes out more natural instead of feeling like I'm just talking to a screen and not actually involved in a conversation.
Right. Yeah. Another thing too is when I did this, because I usually will I'll kind of get in my bed and I'll have my laptop on this little tray in front of me and I'll be doing stuff, but I don't have room for like my microphone stand, and I didn't want to just use the regular laptop mic because I'm just not sure how good it is. So I had this thing pulled off, and I'm like, talking like I'm hosting a show, and I was like, I feel like an idiot right now. This is not. And I do a lot of things on my channel where I am doing idiotic stuff, but like for some reason that felt even worse to me. Like I'm David, and oh my gosh, man, I don't know.
Well, your segment turned out great, but I have to say, like, I went and listened to that episode, and a lot of the contributors who contribute all the time, I was like, did they write and like script this out? Because they just got so much clear, concise information presented in 7 minutes. So I have a feeling that many of them are kind of writing it all down and basically reading off a script. But yeah, you did great.
Well, I thought you did too. I didn't think yours was sloppy at all. But I mean, hey, we're our own worst critics for sure.
That's right.
But yeah, I assume that a lot of people do a lot more scripting than I certainly do. Like when I do my videos, I'll do my little character segments and I'll kind of script those out usually because I have to film 2 different parts separately. So if I don't have a script, I'm not gonna say what I need
Right.
to have it make sense. But otherwise I don't. And it honestly would probably be a lot smoother and more professional sounding if I did, but also I would completely stop doing it. I would be like, I don't want to write a script every time.
Yeah.
I can't. It'll drive me insane.
When we started the show, because we do like a little game description segment, on the episodes where we play a game and then discuss it, we write a game description. And I was the one doing that game description for a while, and I hated it. It was like the worst part about doing the podcast, trying to come up with the words. And the funny thing is like I could even write it, and then I would sit down and record it, and I would still mess it up, and then I'd have to do it like 5 times over. Like I couldn't read off of paper, and it doesn't sound natural at all when I do it. So you can tell there's a clear transition between when we kind of have that banter and the poll at the beginning, and then you jump into the game description, and then I just kind of like stumble through it. So luckily Chris and Adam have kind of picked that up for me. I think maybe because I suck at it, and maybe just because it was natural. They're doing the editing, and so they'll just kind of record that segment. But they always sound much more natural than I ever do. I always feel like I'm just like you. Like I would be a terrible actor because I'm literally just reading off a script, and you could tell people would be like, yeah, like I just literally read that off the script.
Yeah, no, I know. I know that I feel like it'd probably be better, numbers wise. I'd probably retain more people or whatever, maybe if I was just like super planned out that way. But I don't know. For me personally, when I'm listening to someone or watching someone, I like it when it feels more just kind of natural and flowy. Like I'm not going to name any specifics, but there's definitely been podcasts that I listen to and I'm like, this is so scripted down to even their off the cuff jokes that I'm like, this is not, I can't do this. Like it just feels so stilted and weird to me. And I'd much prefer it just be natural. And if people flub things up here and there or just say something that doesn't quite make sense and they have to go back and make sense of it later, I'd rather that by far. It feels more like I'm, in on a conversation instead of just, I don't know, hearing someone perform for me in a way. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
Do you want to argue about something?
You know what, David, I hate arguing about stuff. Stop asking me questions.
I think that is not true. So what I do on the show, as I talked about on the top, is we will have a debate on a topic. And in this case, we're going to talk about whether or not crowdfunding is a good or bad thing. And just to make it a little tougher, our side in this debate is going to be chosen randomly, and our turn order is going to be chosen randomly. And so we're going to first each give our opening statement or argument. Then we'll, again, in turn order, give our rebuttal. And then again, in turn order, we will do our closing, final mic drop of a statement. I hope this isn't too controversial for anyone. I hope it doesn't lose us all our followers. So what I've done through the magic of technology is I have found a number randomizer, and it's going to pick a number from 1 to 10, but it doesn't matter. It could be from 1 to 2, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if it pulls up an odd number, then you are going to be pro crowdfunding. If it's an even number, you will be against crowdfunding.
Okay.
And then after we're done doing our argument, we're going to talk about what we really think about it. So we're not going to be misrepresenting ourselves if we're arguing something we don't believe in. So first off, okay, hold on. Whoops. Okay, there we go. All right, so 5. So
I'm pro crowdfunding.
You're pro crowdfunding. Okay.
Right. Yep.
And then we'll see who goes first. So if it's an odd number, you will go first. And if it's an even number, I will go first. And I get 6. So even number, I'll go first. Okay.
All right.
Are you ready? I'm not sure I am.
I'm ready to crush you in this debate.
We'll see. I want you to know, I always tell people, and I'll tell people again, that, let us know in the comments who you think won this debate. I had a debate with Riley Stocky's my only previous debate, and no one has thus far told me who won that debate, which means, Tim, that I am undefeated. So, undefeated in this contest. I don't want to make you nervous, but
All right, listeners,
there it is.
listen up. Vote
All
for
right.
me.
Okay. All right. Against crowdfunding. All right. So, crowdfunding has been around, I don't know, it feels like a decade. Maybe it's been less, maybe it's been more. And originally it was this cool idea where if you have this idea for a game, if you're the creative type, you could go in there and you could get funding to make your game. And it's definitely changed from that. It's now a pre-order system where big companies like Simon or Come On or whatever they're calling themselves right now can say, here's our 18th edition of Zombicide with 15 different expansions, and you'll pay us a lot of money to get it. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem with that on its own. I mean, it sucks if you're, a small-time, game designer trying to make your way in the world, trying to find an audience. Can't really do that through that anymore. But the real problem, or one of the real problems, is that this hurts your friendly local game store. They rely on people to come in and buy games through them directly so that they can put food on their table. And what happens through Kickstarter, it becoming this giant platform that seems like most games come through now, or it doesn't have to be Kickstarter, it could be GameFed, whatever, name your thing, but is now people go through there and they don't want the retail version, because if they get the retail version, they're missing out on those 18 expansions and the gold-plated miniatures and whatever else it is. It's basically destroying the friendly local game store. Are they as friendly as they used to be? Or are they disgruntled? Are they upset? Are they mad when you even talk about a Kickstarter game in their store? And you will, because they're everywhere. It's destroying the mom and pop shops. It's destroying the American dream. It is ruining our hobby and our nation. That's my opening statement.
All right. Am I rebutting your opening statement, or am I making my own opening statement?
You just make your own statement, but if you feel like putting a rebuttal, you do whatever feels right to you.
All right. So, have you ever played Gloomhaven? There's probably a good chance you have, because it is the #1 ranked game of all time. Gloomhaven would not exist without crowdfunding. Do you like add-ons? Do you like special Kickstarter exclusive miniatures and expansions and things like that? Well, those would not exist without crowdfunding. In fact, probably what the whole hobby would have if crowdfunding didn't exist is a bunch of brown and beige and green euros. Because without the competition that crowdfunding has brought, game publishers would not be putting the money into their artwork. They wouldn't be putting the money into the production. We'd have paper thin cardboard for our boards. We would have an absence of reasonable artwork. Everything would look like the Castles of Burgundy. And there are also a lot of games that just never would have been made without crowdfunding. Games that you're playing today, some of the top games that have ever existed, as I mentioned Gloomhaven already, but dozens of other games that only exist because of crowdfunding exist because the community supported them. And this is a community. The board game community needs your help. These are small publishers. These people are not making any money. They're probably driving like 30-year-old Toyotas, because they don't get any money on these crowdfunding campaigns. They're just putting all their heart and soul into getting these games made for your enjoyment, and crowdfunding is the way to support them.
Well, that was fantastic. I like you trying to say that the crowdfunding companies are these small designers. And look, I'm reasonable. I'm an honest man. Sometimes you get those that come through, but the Cephalofair Games that started Gloomhaven, I realized that was a big risk for them. That could have not taken off. I respect it. They came out with a brilliant game that, I don't remember, did millions of dollars on Kickstarter. That's great. And allow them to do other stuff like Frosthaven, which if I want to buy that at retail because I didn't back it, is going to cost me, what is it, $270? Something insane like that.
So it sounds, David, like you're saying that crowdfunding would have saved you a lot of money if you believed in it and you supported the publishing company.
Well, that's an interesting way to look at it. I don't think that's what I'm saying, though. What I'm saying is they're deliberately, maliciously screwing over the people who cannot, at the drop of a hat, it takes about 30 days to drop a hat, spend a huge amount of money to get a game. Now, there's lots of big games that I would like to get, but they fall in this little time frame, and I can't necessarily get them at that time. And if I can't, I just miss out. And some of those games will come to retail and some won't. But either way, they can be at this inflated price. You know, I recently heard it said that buying things at these discounts is actually something reserved for the rich, because they could do it at the drop of that. They can have their Costco membership because they can afford to do that, and they can afford to like get these huge things in bulk. Well, I can't buy Marvel Zombicide and all of its various add-ons and whatnot all at once necessarily. I might have other expenses in my life. I'm not one of the 1% or whatever it is that can do this left and right for all these big Kickstarters that come out. I would like to take that money, and I would like to go to my friendly local game store and be like, you know what? Today I would like to buy that core set because I have enough money now to pay that core set, and I can do it when I'm ready. And then maybe a month later, I'd be like, you know what? I can get that expansion today, and I'll go and get that expansion because I have the money. Then I could spread it out. I am still supporting CMON or whoever it is, but I'm also supporting the friendly local game store. I am not someone who thinks that the rich should have everything just handed to them, including these special deals that the less fortunate among us just cannot reach.
Yeah, I think the counterpoint to that, David, is Marvel United. Let's take a look at Marvel United. If you were rich and decided to back that game right when it came out, you would pay about $50 for the base box on Kickstarter, and then you could pay for all these exclusives. And what that allowed CMON to do is actually get this out to big box stores and make it accessible to the average person. And now you can pick up Marvel United for its true value of about maybe $10 to $20. It's on sale all the time. So it seems like Kickstarter, like crowdfunding, is actually like crowdfunding has actually democratized board games in a lot of ways. And beyond that, you have to think about the fact that when you're crowdfunding something, you're paying the publisher directly, and the designer's getting a bigger cut of that. But when you buy it from your friendly local game store, and let's face it, most of these friendly local game stores are not that friendly. I mean, I've been going to stores when I mentioned my Magic the Gathering hobby days. How many like mean nerds were sitting at the counter, like not willing to even make eye contact with the woman, and basically just talking down to you when you went up to ask for some help. That's how friendly these game stores are. They don't deserve my money. But because of crowdfunding, those game stores actually have the access to sell these games that wouldn't have even existed without us supporting the community and the crowdfunding that exists there. Also, though, when a friendly local game store, as you call it, sells a game, they take a cut off the top, and then the distributor takes a cut off the top, and then the publisher and the designer, they get pennies. They get pennies for what you've paid for it. Versus when you're crowdfunding it, most of that money is going to the production of the game, but then they actually get something. They actually get something for their hard labor and their hard effort. And I think our designers that are making all this effort into entertaining us deserve some of that cut.
Yeah, you make some interesting points. Especially,
I know.
It resonated with me when you talked about all the effort they put into it. Like, for instance, when they take a basic set of rules and they're like, you know what'll make this sell? Let's slap some Marvel on there. I can't think of an example of that, but maybe you can. I don't know. Or like, hey, you know what we could do to make this fly off the shelf? Let's just put, I don't know, we'll make it fantasy, whatever. Someone sculpt a miniature. Look, I'm not saying that these guys do not work hard at all, but let's not pretend it's all like shining, glittering, perfect gold coming out of these things. Like, as well as I do, that if you go and look at everything that's on crowdfunding now, you're going to find the most popular ones are the ones that have like the shiniest, prettiest pictures, the most amazing looking miniatures. And I like miniatures. Don't get me wrong. I get it. But are those games good? Are they play tested? Is this just some small group of people who are cranking something out and they're like, hey, yeah, we'll put out the money to make miniatures because we know for sure people will buy it. And then they're going to throw it out in the world because I mean, so what? They've got your money now. Like there's not time for word of mouth to really even get around. There might be some reviews, some of them are paid. If it's like me, it's not, and you're getting the honest truth. But, sometimes you're not so sure that it can happen. What do you even know you're getting? This could be something that the designer played once or twice, said, that's fine, give me my paycheck. And that's it. That's what you could be getting. If a game gets to retail, by then it'll have gotten in the hands of more content people, or you can just wait like 2 weeks until people actually buy it off the shelf and play it and put out their own videos then. And you can be like, okay, well now I actually could get an opinion of whether this is actually quality or if it's just pretty garbage. I don't like it when I buy pretty garbage. It happens sometimes. Not every game can be the shining pinnacle of perfection that Marvel United is. Some of them are junk, and that can be very frustrating.
Let's face it, David, marketing works, and that's what you're talking about here, right? And it works. But when you get a game that hasn't gone to Kickstarter, it's the hot new game, it's the Arc Nova of the world, right? Let's face it, you bought that game before you ever played it, before you heard an average person talk about it. And if you did hear an average person talk about it, they were on the hype train. They were liking it because Man vs. Meeple and the Dice Tower were already paid to give good reviews on it. Oh, and so there's no difference. There's no difference in the hype train. I mean, listen, that every time Stonemaier Games releases a game, it's their marketing skills that makes people love it. It's not because they're great games. Sometimes it's because they're great games, but it's because of the marketing skill that sells lots of copies before anyone's ever played it. And if you do buy it, you know what you've got. It's just like with Kickstarter backers too, but you buy a game and now you want to love it. And so you're going to give it a good review if somebody else told you should give it a good review. So the hottest games, many times they're not the best games. They're just well marketed. The best crowdfunded campaigns, they work the same way, but it's not a bad thing. It's helping these small publishers get their games out into the world.
Very nice. So out of curiosity then, let's say I design a game tomorrow. Okay. Well, I spend time on it, not just all tomorrow. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Probably several years, yeah.
Probably several years, but I'm pretty happy with the design of it. I've done some kind of play testing, we'll say, because I'm going to be different than most crowdfunding places. Now, based on my income, which I'm not going to share specifically, I can know I've got a great game. I can have perfect rules. I can have, a real basic version of it that I've cut out of paper. If I want to say, sell that game on Kickstarter, I can't really do that yet because I already need a lot of money. I need a lot of money right now to get an artist because if I draw that art, it's definitely not going to look good. Like I need professional art done. I have to basically create that game ahead of time to the point where it looks like a finished product. And I have to create some kind of animated video. God knows how much that costs. In order to do the thing I need Kickstarter to do, which is to help me fund my game, I already need funds. Like, who is this for? Is this for small creators? Because it doesn't seem like it is to me. It doesn't seem like if I put out the let's say I made the perfect game, like somehow the game with the mechanics that everyone would love, like somehow it would bring people together, create world peace if people would just try it. I put all the rules out so people could see. But I don't have that money, which I definitely do not, to make that look all shiny and pretty. And maybe I get 1 or 2 people funding it because they happen to be friends of mine and they're trying not to make me cry. That's probably what would happen. Thanks, friends. I appreciate that. I'm that small creator. How come I didn't succeed? What happened?
If you don't invest a little bit of your time, maybe some money, maybe you borrow some money from friends to get that campaign off the ground, do you know what happens to your design? Nothing. It doesn't go anywhere. You may be submitted to publishers who get hundreds of designs, and you know what? They don't want an innovative design. They want the same IP that sells every time. They want the same mechanisms that they know are going to sell. They want the next Wingspan. They want them. Basically, if you can sell them a zoo theme game or an animal theme game, you're golden. But other than that, don't expect the publisher to take a risk on that. So you have to take a little bit of a risk yourself. And that is the thing about crowdfunding. It does democratize the ability to get your game published. Is it hard work? Absolutely. Does it take a little bit of risk? Absolutely, it does. But if you actually do have that amazing game and you take that risk and you put the hard work into it, you will get that game made, and you'll make a lot more than that 2% revenue that you get from the game publisher every time they sell a copy. And if they decide they don't want to keep marketing it, it's lost. But if you own it, it's your right. You can do whatever. You can create the next City of Games. You can create the next Cephalofair Games because you created something that's yours and you get to own it.
All right. Do you want to get to our closing thoughts now, or do you want to keep going back and forth?
I think let's get to our closing thoughts. I think
all right, let's do it. All right. So I guess I'm going first. Okay. I'm going to be real honest with everybody right now. Taking this stance, I feel a little bit like a hypocrite because I've certainly backed games. I mean, a real cursory glance over my shelves behind me, you'll see that I've backed a number of them. Some good, some are something else, but looked really nice. So that is all true. And I want to sit here and say that crowdfunding is the best thing in the world. I would love to say that. I can appreciate that some games may not hit the store shelves without crowdfunding. I understand that. But that's ignoring something else. If those games didn't come through Kickstarter, if they didn't hit the shelves at all, there would be plenty of other things. We might not have Marvel Zombicide, all several $100s of it, whatever it is. But there would be some other game that would probably be just as fantastic, perhaps in a different way. Maybe it wouldn't have a 2-foot tall Galactus. I don't know. But we're missing out on games, is what I'm saying. These designers would make other things that would fit into the constraints of what it takes to get into a retail store. And you know what? We wouldn't care. It'd be great. We would still love those games. And I know that that's true because you can still buy some games that aren't these super big, insane things that people love. I mean, I'm not trying to knock the quality of Arc Nova, but it's, some cardboard and like a stack of cards. It's beautiful. It's all great. Don't get me wrong. But that wasn't a Kickstarter thing, as you mentioned. And people love it. It's fantastic. We could have more Arc Novas right now and fewer Seas of Legends or whatever this game is called. I don't even remember anymore because the app has made it unplayable until maybe recently. I don't know. I haven't tried it yet now and I'm afraid to. I've had that for 2 years. It's not very playable. But I could have had something else. I could have not gotten that. Maybe the designers would have made something that was ready day one for retail because they had to have it ready for retail. They didn't have people who were taking a risk and buying their game. They had to sell it to stores that had to trust them further to bring them new games. So I can't say there's no garbage in your friendly local game store. Bad games happen no matter where you go. But I think the risk gets cut down. The chance of you getting a bad game just because it looked pretty gets cut down. The chance that you can actually go into the store and play the game in person, feel the components. Because, I mean, playing these games on Tabletop Simulator or whatever, that's great. It gives you an idea if you like the rules. But you can still get components that are not what you expected. But if you can go into a game store, assuming they still exist, and play one of these games that just came to retail in the normal ways, you can know if you like that game ahead of time. Or maybe you could just hear about it, as I mentioned before. But you avoid all the risk. You help your friendly local game store, which for many people is the only place they really have to play. The only place they can really meet other gamers other than, I don't know, I guess sketchy meetups online, whatever that can get you. Probably murdered. Not worth it. You laugh, but that's because you haven't been murdered. I haven't either, but I assume it's bad. So, my point is, you want to support the mom and pop shop. Yeah, you could talk about all the little stages of development, yada, yada, manufacturing, all that has to go to. That's fine, whatever, sure. But support the mom and pop shop. Get the good games. Heck, make friends with the people there. Maybe then if you hate the game, they'll even help you out and be like, oh, well, here, why don't you put that on our demo shelf and we'll give you discounts on something else. Who knows? I don't know. You work it out with them. That's fine. Either way, you have a lower chance of getting a cruddy game. You're not really missing out on anything because there will be other games if these big, huge games don't exist. There will be different games that will never see the light of day with Kickstarter around shoveling shiny garbage at you. Don't keep risking your money on what might be gems. And there are some. I'm not saying they're all bad, obviously. But do you really want to wait months and months for your several $100 game that you get and realize that it's like a roll and move Candyland clone with really awesome miniatures that actually feel sticky and don't hold paint for some reason? Awful. Don't do it. Forget about crowdfunding. You're wasting your money. You're getting caught up in FOMO. Buy something you know you'll like, or at least have a better chance that you'll like. Support your community. Support your local businesses. Support the family next door. Support the American dream. Don't turn your back on America. Those are my final thoughts.
All right. I'm going to keep my closing statements tight and succinct here. I'm going to make it quick.
Boy. Okay.
Do you want to have a game delivered to your house at a discounted cost with the most amazing production you could possibly imagine on a regular basis? Just go back and crowdfund some games. And here's the deal, guys. And David mentioned risk. He mentioned the risk of backing one of these crowdfunded games and getting crap. Here's the deal. Suckers are born every day. If you don't like that crowdfunded game, sell it to somebody else. They'll probably have FOMO for missing the Kickstarter, and you can probably make it from. It's like an investment, actually. You go back and back a funded game, get all the Kickstarter exclusives. You can resell it for more than you paid for it. If you don't like it, if you do like it, then you get to brag to your friends that you were the most hipster of all of them. You knew before anyone else what the best games were. Crowdfunding 2022.
All right. That was phenomenal. That was great. All right, folks, please let us know in the comments which one of us won. Because if you don't, then that makes 3 of the people who have been involved in these undefeated, and that's kind of ridiculous. Someone just has to win or lose at some point. You know what I mean? Like, let's have someone be the champion here. Whichever one of us wins this is like the person with the best record. So
I am campaigning for this, by the way. So watch for this on social media, because you're going to hear me talking about this.
You know what? The important thing is that the facts will win out in the end, and that was what I had. Except I don't believe half the stuff I just told you. So I mean, I'm okay. I kickstart stuff. Or whatever, crowdfund stuff. I like it. I think it's fun. I'm not saying you should not buy things from the game store or anything like that. I do enjoy it though. I know you though are not maybe as big a fan of crowdfunding.
First of all, I have to just say that if I win this debate, it's going to be a shock because I was on the losing side all along, because crowdfunding is not a good argument to make at this point. And David made some decent points, but the reality is that there's too many games in the marketplace. It's saturated, and there's a lot of games that don't need to exist. And there's a lot of games, I'm looking at David's shelf right here, that don't need to exist. And yet they're taking up space on his game shelf right now. You didn't need to make it personal. And so, you know, backing games that you have not played or that you haven't gotten personal, recommendations on, or recommendations from people you trust, it's a big risk. There are some benefits obviously for small game publishers and things like that. As you mentioned, David, the largest crowdfunding campaigns and Kickstarters are not small publishers. They're generally huge. Like Come On is a publicly traded company at this point. All they're trying to do is take your money for their stakeholders. You're basically just lining the pockets of investors every time you back a Come On game. You're not supporting a local designer. Now, I think crowdfunding had its place, and I think it did some really good things. It did drive some innovation. It drove some great competition. And I think that there are still some innovative, small publishers that are getting their games made in a way that they wouldn't have been going to retail. But I also think that most of the best games of all time have been created and designed and then published by small publishing companies that can put their games out through retail, through normal channels, and we're getting some of the actual best gameplay. And David, you mentioned it in that debate, is crowdfunding games, right? Like, sure, some of the big ones, they may be still getting tested, but small designers who are putting their games out generally are not going to have the skills to understand, first of all, like how to play test a game properly and make sure that it's actually fun. They're not going to have the skills to actually get it made in a timely manner and within the funds that they charged you for it. It's a good chance a lot of these small designers that are taking the risk on crowdfunding are going to lose money, maybe even lose their house. That's happened before. Like maybe,
Right.
Maybe you never get the game. I mean, it's stated right there on Kickstarter, like, this is not a pre-order system. You may never get what you're asking for here. So I think there's a lot of I think for consumers, crowdfunding is generally a bad deal. But I do back some things as well. Now, I generally back things that are like deluxe versions of games that already existed and are well reviewed and have been tested and are, that I know are good games. And I've taken risks on a couple other, and most of the ones that I took a risk on that were not previously published games are not in my collection anymore because they weren't that good. But there was a couple, there are a couple good ones. So I'm not saying it's all bad, but I think generally it's bad for consumers. It's good for publishers, obviously, when they can pull it off. But the small publishers that it's really there for, I think they get less benefit than the large publicly traded companies or the large publishers that have been around for a while and really shouldn't be and don't need to use crowdfunding.
Yeah, it's interesting because I can't argue against anything you just said. Like, I think that's all 100% correct. I could see a lot of reasons why crowdfunding is not the best way to go in a lot of ways. I'd be lying if I said I still don't like doing it though, like to my detriment in a way. Like, I wish I didn't, but every Tuesday I'm gonna say, oh, what's new on Kickstarter this week? Is there anything real cool? It happens every time. It's to an embarrassing degree. I don't know how many Kickstarters I'm waiting on. I don't want to think about it. I definitely have one that I've given up hope will ever arrive at my door.
Which one was that?
It was for Relic Knights 2nd Edition, which is like a skirmish miniatures game, kind of anime style, and it had some of the stuff from the 1st edition. And it was designed or put out. It was being put out by Ninja Division, and then I got really unclear what happened to them. They like somewhat went under, but not like totally dead. And then they were trying to do other projects to help fund the project that already funded, which seems like that should be all taken care of. And then they've had things where it's like, oh, well, we have some of your stuff now, but what you need to do is just like make an order on our site and we'll just send that with whatever you order. It's like, well, I'm not giving you more money. Like, no. Like, I'm already, like, at this point we're years gone, because this was like 2017, I think was that thing. At this point, it's like, you know what? I don't miss that particular wad of cash, and I'm not going to hand over more money so you can send me the thing that I was supposed to get. Like, nah, I'm good. Like, forget about it. It's, I don't know how often that actually happens, but it's a bummer for sure. But I've gotten things that I think are really cool. And a lot of times these games with the big miniatures and whatnot, which are the ones I was like hammering on the most. Like, I realize that I haven't played these games. Who knows? I mean, even if it is generally received as a great game, that's no guarantee that I will like it. I mean, that certainly happened where a well-loved game is not one that I enjoy. But I always kind of convince myself by saying, you know what, though? I do like those miniatures. I wouldn't mind just having those miniatures and being like, look at these cool miniatures that I own, and I will be okay with it, which is somewhat true and somewhat, it more cushions the blow, I guess I would say, if I end up not liking the game. It doesn't make it all better, but it's like, well, at least I've got these neat figures that theoretically someday I could paint, but probably I won't. But
yeah, well, just remember, David, if you don't like a game or you don't end up deciding to play it, sell it before the next edition Kickstarter comes out, because people are going to be wishing that they backed it. And actually, you're even in a great spot because you can make content about how amazing it is, get the FOMO driven, and then sell your copy.
I think you overestimate how big an influence I have on the gaming community, but I appreciate that. That's very nice of you.
No, I think we have to acknowledge though too the challenges that companies who have been going through crowdfunding and making commitments on delivering games within a certain time and a certain cost and stuff like that are dealing with because of the issues that COVID caused with distribution channels and production channels and obviously shipping and all of that stuff is drastically more expensive. So sadly, I think a lot of publishing companies who did put their heart and soul into these Kickstarters and maybe even were ready to produce a great game ended up losing their money, losing their pants on it. And it took a major hit, definitely didn't make the kind of money they were hoping to potentially invest in other games or things like that. So you have to have a little bit of patience at this point with what's going on in the world, but it's a risk, and that's the whole point of it. It's like you're not pre-ordering something, and it's kind of neat. Like a lot of the publishers who have a backing now, who you can trust their games and the quality of the games they publish, they offer pre-orders. You can still be the first one to get a game. You can still get it at a discount sometimes with some add-ons and things like that, and you don't have to take the risk on crowdfunding. But there are still some small game designers and publishers. Skybound is a great example, actually. Skybound and what's James
Druid City.
Yeah, Druid City, right? They were a combined company, but then they've split back up again. But James Hudson is a big advocate for crowdfunding, and it kind of hit me. I think he was about to start the crowdfunder for the Tidal Blades 2 campaign. And I remember reading a post from him the day before saying, I'm a little nervous because tomorrow could determine whether I have to leave my job in order to support my family. Because if that crowdfunding didn't go well, he wouldn't, that's his revenue. He has to sell enough copies through that in order to make the game, but also to pay the salaries of himself and the other people that work for the company and things like that. So I understand that, some publishers really rely on the marketing that crowdfunding brings. Jamie Stegmaier talks a lot about how, he started his company on crowdfunding, and if it didn't exist, Stonemaier wouldn't exist. Like Viticulture, Euphoria, and Scythe were huge hits on crowdfunding, and he was lucky enough to do so well with those that he was able to walk away because of all of the he said, I think he primarily walked away just because of all the vitriol that came from the backers when there's some small mistake. But he talks a lot about the advantages of marketing through that, and if you don't have another avenue to market, that you can get that. And Garfield Games a couple years ago kind of made an announcement that they were not going to crowdfund anymore. And I forget when they did it, but they I think they said that they were going to stop. Like he said, Sean Phillips had said that he wasn't going to crowdfund anymore, except because people were kind of committed to it in the West Kingdom series. He went ahead and did the final game, the Viscounts campaign there. And I don't remember if he tried to sell something else, but obviously they're still putting their games and stuff on crowdfunding. And I think he had to do a reversal, because I feel like he did. Like they tested some game, maybe it was like the first Circadian's First Light or something like that, to do just through pre-orders and through retail. And they just lost all the momentum that you would get through the excitement of a crowdfunding campaign, and all of that stuff. So companies can kind of use it as a marketing technique. But you have to understand, as a consumer, though, that's all great for publishers and for the companies that are trying to make these games. But you have to understand, for consumers, it's not good. It is dry. It's like it's basically exploiting our human psyche to drive us to be consumers in a way that we shouldn't be doing. And so that's my biggest problem with crowdfunding, is that it is it's driving us into behavior that isn't actually healthy and isn't good for our pocketbooks, and it's not risk averse, when we could just there's so many thousands of great games that are getting put out already. You can just go to your local retailer for. So it's like, I feel for the companies that are trying to make games and the advantages they can get through crowdfunding, but it doesn't make it good for consumers. So I'm going to continue to argue against it in most cases, and then also still fall on my own knife once in a while and back something from time to time.
Well, if you're doing something bad, it makes it okay. Is that right? I think that's right.
Here, I'm just going to have my third drink tonight for that.
Good. All right. Fantastic.
I'm completely aware of what I'm doing to myself.
I know. No, it's bad every time, especially, I mean, not so much like if it's a little one, but if it's like one of the bigger ones and I decide, okay, I'm going to back it, I'm like, this is Like I know deep down in my heart, like, okay, even if I like the game, the chance that I'm going to play all these ridiculous expansions is
Modules,
like
yeah,
almost
yeah.
nothing. It's
That's
almost
exactly right. That's
non-existent.
that's right. They get you with all this Kickstarter exclusive stuff, which is usually of lower quality, but it's also unnecessary. And the
Right.
reality is, like, I mean, look at your game shelf behind you. You could spend your whole year playing games on your game shelf, and you
For
wouldn't
sure.
get through all the games that are there. So,
No,
what's
that's
the
right.
chance you're going to get this new Kickstarter in 3 years, and then also play, enough games, like 60 games, to get through all the modules of expansion stuff that's in there?
Right.
It's almost non-existent. So
Yeah.
it's a rare person that can fully take advantage of all that Kickstarter exclusive stuff.
Yeah, agreed. But I'm gonna still be a sucker for it every time something comes up and I can actually afford it. It's just gonna happen until it's all something really bites me hard. Like, I kept bringing up Marvel's Homicide because it weighs heavily on my mind because I paid for that stuff. If somehow that doesn't deliver, it will. But I mean, if it didn't,
Yeah.
I'm gonna just go straight Amish. I'm not even gonna forget about looking at Kickstarter. I'm not even gonna look at my computer. I'm
Done
gonna
with
give up.
technology.
I'm done. I'm done. I'm just gonna build farms and turn butter and have a happy life,
Yeah.
or a boring one. I don't know,
See,
depending.
that's
But
the other funny thing about crowdfunding and Kickstarter is, like, the majority of, like, it makes sense. You trust the people that have been successful in the past, or the companies
right,
that come on, it's a publicly traded company. They're not going to go out of business. There's too
right,
many people that care about it. So it's a pretty safe bet. So you're throwing all this money into a company that doesn't need it. And then the smaller
right,
publishers, well, if I was to put my first game out on Kickstarter, yeah, I'm only going to get 2 backers if I'm lucky, because nobody wants to take that risk. They know it's a risk, and
yeah,
they can sense that it's a bigger risk. So then that small publisher who might have a genius idea is never going to get that game made, because it's too risky for consumers to do.
yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Tim. When you get your game on Kickstarter, let me know, and
You'll be number
I will
2.
have. I'll be one of the 2 backers. I have no problem doing that, whatever it's about, unless it's like literally called "I Hate Marvel United." Then I'll have to think about it. I don't know if you can get away with that. That's a different kind of problem, legal.
There
Probably.
might be a big enough audience to sell, though. That seems like that's a marketable idea.
I don't know how to make you accept joy into your life. I don't know how to convince you that you deserve the happiness that Marvel United can bring. I hope I someday can, but in the meantime, wallow in your sadness and insist that you don't like it. That's fine. Whatever works for you. And a similar note, that'll mean nothing except for to you and me, right within arm reach. I have something else that you love. Look.
Oh, I love it.
I'm gonna be having that for dinner sometime soon. Not just that, but anyway, inside joke. I don't know why I did that. Okay, so blah. Why don't you tell people where they can follow you, listen to you, etc.
You can find the Board Game Hot Takes podcast on any platform that you listen to podcasts. We even upload all of our podcast episodes to YouTube. So if you want to listen to your video, then you can go to YouTube and search Board Game Hot Takes. We're also on Twitter at BG_Hot Takes. That's where I run that account, but Adam and Chris are on there interacting all the time. That's where we interact the most with listeners. But we do have a Facebook presence at Board Game Hot Takes as well. So come out and check out our show, and would love to chat with you anytime.
Please do. Their show is really, truly excellent. I love it. It's become one of my favorites very, very quickly from when I started listening to it, far surpassing shows I've listened to for far longer. So really not one that you want to miss. He's got such a great voice. You listen to him, it's great. And his co-hosts do too. I'm over here like, hi, I'm David. They sound wonderful, and they're so just go listen to them. My God, I don't know.
Thanks, David. But before we end, I have to tell a story too, because I also got introduced to you through the Board Game Community Show, which is Riley Stock's wonderful show where he interviews somebody and has a chat with them in the board game industry every week, or community. But I happened to be listening to one of his episodes, and you were on there. I don't think I heard the first. I think you were on before I ever was, so I didn't hear your first. But you were on a show where you kind of like helped him answer listener questions or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And I was listening to that, and no joke about this, listening to that and going like, this David guy I'll never make it, because this David guy is so much more interesting and entertaining than I will ever be. And so I immediately wanted to meet you. And so I'm so honored to be on the All Games New and Old. YouTube channel right now and on the show because I've been it's been like a year I've been wanting to do this. So thank you for having me on. I'm really honored. And it's been fun to become friends with you and call you my friend now.
Agreed. I should make a whole segment where we just compliment each other all the time. That would be great. Anyway, all that fantastic. Watch my show, listen to his. If we're on something else, watch that too. I mean, we're both great. I don't know what to tell you. We're both fantastic. So
you just watch the show. You already know we're both great. So
yes, exactly. Even though I won the debate, like he's still really good. So, listen to him sometimes. It's great. Okay. I do hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, please hit like and subscribe and click the little bell icon so you can know about the next time I put out a video. Otherwise, I look forward to see you all around the table again at All Games New and Old. Bye.
Take care, everybody.
If you enjoyed that video, you might also like this one.
Or this one.
If you like any of our videos, what you should do is click this little button to subscribe so you'll know about the next time we put out a video.
We'll see you around the table.
Bye.
Bye.